Thank you for joining us today for the Meritorious series, Bitcoin, Crypto, and Blockchain. I am your host, Catherine Kostreva, co-founder of Meritorious, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our panel for this session, NFTs and DeFi Explained. First up, our moderator is Aaron Bazin. He's the former U.S. Army Infantry Officer and current Managing Director of the Donovan Group J5 U.S. Special Operations Command in Tampa, Florida. He previously worked at the U.S. Department of State, Department of Defense, and NATO. He is co-founder and chief strategy officer for VetCoin, a military-grade cryptocurrency that gives back to veterans in need, launching this fall with an initial coin offering beginning November 11th, 2021, Veterans Day. Next up, we have the lovely Karla Ballard. She's the founder and CEO of YING, a peer-to-peer skill-sharing and global time-sharing platform and mobile app engaging members and organizations in a complementary currency that supports community and individual benefits. Previously, Karla worked as the Senior Vice President of Participant Media's TAG division. She was also the Senior Vice President at Ogilvy and Mather. She is a current advisory board member of Blue Star Families. She's the co-chair of Shareable, #Lunchbag, and USC's Next Gen Council for Steven Spielberg's Shoah Foundation. She has spoken at Harvard, UCLA, and Georgetown University, and is the co-founder of the first urban league in the state of Delaware, Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League. Karla served as the first female national president of the National Urban League Young Professionals. Our second panelist is John Schroder, a Marine Corps infantry officer, graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and managing partner at Vellum Capital, a cryptocurrency investments fund. John previously served as the CEO of Juvo Technologies. His time there was highlighted by Juvo's acquisition of digital payment provider Donovan, along with transitioning Juvo from a regionally managed IT service provider into an enterprise software platform with users nationwide. John came to crypto through the back door, not because of Bitcoin, but because of Ethereum and other smart contract-inspired currencies. Thank you for being here, Aaron, Karla, and John. I don't know if Aaron's having some technical difficulties, so we'll see if he can take it away. If not, I will be your ad hoc moderator. Very good. Welcome, Aaron. Welcome, John. Welcome, Karla. Testing audio, Aaron.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Actually, Catherine, can you take my computer's messing up? I'll jump off and jump back on again, but something's going on here.
That's what I'm here for, but I'm so sorry. See, that's what happens when you work for the DoD. So
I know, I'm in a government building, that's why.
So Karla.
Give me 2 minutes, I'll be back up.
All right, Karla, this one's for you. Two of the biggest investment trends related to blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies are non-fungible tokens or NFTs. And there's the decentralized finance part that's otherwise known as DeFi. So let's start with the basics. What are NFTs and what does DeFi mean?
So thank you so much for having me. This is really important because as we're seeing, even in the regulatory environment that we're in, consumers are beginning to adopt this more and more. So let's talk about what NFTs are. NFTs first, non-fungible token. Different than Bitcoin, where you can do that exchange, a non-fungible token is really a data storage unit that is identifying a very specific asset that's not being exchanged. And that's one of the first things I like to start with because it starts to get confusing. And the other panelists, I think it was James that mentioned, it's really a user adoption issue because it's hard to understand how these things are working. So an NFT can be used for art. It can be used to even deeds. We're seeing NFTs literally being leveraged as a way to stamp a very specific asset. I think it's very exciting from that standpoint. Let's talk about what, as a former banker, DeFi is. This is decentralized finance. I come from the banking industry. So in many cases, what decentralized means is we are disrupting some of your traditional intermediaries like exchange brokerages, banks, you name it. And we're seeing a lot of peer-to-peer transactions start to happen that you typically would have seen negotiated through an intermediary. So it's as simple as that. It is literally the finance tools that we're used to, but now it's becoming decentralized with very specific protocols that mirror a lot of our traditional like institutions.
All right, I'm still your wonderful moderator. So, Ron, let's add to what Karla just defined in terms of NFT and DeFi, but let's dive a little bit deeper. So, how are NFTs different from Bitcoin?
Well, I think Karla already, she does hit on that with regards to that they are truly different. And I think Karla's definition of that, I think she said a data storage unit. And I really kind of like that. Because you really are, you're allowing, or the NFT really does allow you to almost put whatever you want inside this little, call it a data capsule. And so she mentioned deeds, and I think deeds, real estate, you can see this happening there. I think you've got sports and fan tokens that you're starting to see. So you can allow for governance structures. If you're a fan, I live outside of New Orleans. So if I'm a Saints fan, I technically could own something like a Saints token. And maybe that allows me to vote on what color uniforms they wear, for their next Monday night football game. So any number of things that you can put within that NFT. But I like Karla's notion of that data storage unit. So whatever you can think of, you can put it in there, but there's just this notion of scarcity. So perhaps we could possibly say that where the link between Bitcoin and NFTs is this understanding that scarcity means something. So with Bitcoin, we say 21 billion Bitcoin, and that scarcity provides the value that people are starting to see. That truly does mean something. With NFTs, it's rather similar. So I don't have to be into the art world. I mean, I'm not going to pay whatever it was, $70 million for digital art, but that doesn't mean that there's not value there. Somebody thought there was. I think there's I think a good analogy a lot of times is with baseball cards. I think a Honus Wagner Pittsburgh Pirate 1911 baseball card, sold for like $3.2 million in 2016. I'm not going to buy that because I'm not into that, but it doesn't mean that there's not value. So I think the one thing that what makes conferences like this and any sort of venue like this is to try to move away from just the art, because I think NFTs, when it's just art, people are going, this just seems silly because somebody's buying an ether rock for $86,000. And that makes sense to a very small group of people who, let's face it, they're doing that more out of a historical context than anything else. It allows them to kind of say that they were groundbreakers. And I respect that. Again, I'm not going to pay $86,000 for a digital rock, even if it is unique, but that's just me. And so I think all of these things, again, value, beauty, that's in the eye of the beholder. But I think what NFTs does get us into, though, is allows us to begin crossing chains, crossing platforms. I've got 5 kids. They could care less about all this stuff when I start talking about it until I start mentioning Fortnite. And maybe they could buy skins in the future on Fortnite, and they could take that over into their Minecraft or their Clash of Clans game that they're playing and actually allow those items, skins, whatever, weapons, and move those cross-platform. That starts to mean something to people. So again, value's in the eye of the beholder for sure. And I think as NFTs, one of the great things going on right now, again, is people starting to see the use cases are beyond just digital art, if you will.
Perfect. Now, Aaron, I see you are back in the flesh. And so let's test your audio, and we're on question number 3.
Okay, can you hear me?
Perfect.
Very good, yes.
No, I really like that comment you just made, John, about how it's all about the trust. And so that's when I boil down the blockchain to what really matters. It comes down to digitized trust. And that's how I think of it. And so I think we're the same sort of mindset on that. So the next question is for Karla. As DeFi as a concept, it feels more disruptive in terms of the good that it can bring to our financial systems. Can you please tell us about YING and the concept of peer-to-peer lending, as well as your use case of complementary currency within the YING community? As we know, it's all about the use case. So can you give us some more information on that?
Absolutely. Let me start with really what the platform's all about and where it really came from. As I mentioned, I was a former banker at MBNA America. If anyone remembers the credit card affinity based institution, did very, very well, and then eventually got bought out by Bank of America. But one thing that it taught me was the power of affinity groups, whether or not I'm a super fan of the NFL and love football, or whether or not I'm part of my local block neighborhood. There's something about a group that we're a part of that we have a close affinity to. So I decided to ensure that we could build a culture that cares through creating a peer-to-peer group skill sharing platform. And I've been thrilled to see the number of groups that are now onboarding and getting really excited, really because of the pandemic right now. We're facing a financial crisis in many cases, and people are really starting to pivot how they work. What they want to make an investment in. And so part of what we believe is the idea of being able to tap into those resources that are just even within your own neighborhood, your own networks, things that you care about. That, for me, really illustrated the ability to increase resiliency. So I appreciate James's comment before, because a lot of this, as it relates to blockchain and crypto, was just, it gets really complicated when you talk about peer-to-peer skill sharing or peer-to-peer anything. And so part of what we created was a utility platform, very basic. It allows for individuals to literally share, request a task on demand, just like you would call up an Uber or Lyft or anything like that, and ask for help from your own community so that you could then be able to get the things that you need and the value out of it. Where am I going with respect to how it ties back to currency? At the end of the day, what was really key is we wanted to use tokens. In many cases, this is very much like a stable coin. This allows to timestamp that skill sharing transaction. So that would be called, in the cases of cryptocurrency, a stable coin. Some people might call it a utility token. Second was for us to be able to then step back and begin to examine what it would look like if we did an IEO or an ICO. That's an initial exchange offering where the coin is then offered within an exchange, or an ICO, initial cryptocurrency offering. Right now, Aaron, like you launching, which I'm so excited, by the way, that you're launching the veteran coin. I was hoping someone would do that, so thank you. But unlike what you're doing, we're actually waiting right now to see the regulatory play out of this. And again, we're being so cautious because, unfortunately, I think in the beginning, it was like the wild, wild west, and some hands had to be slapped. And we're not anti-government in any way. So we want to kind of work through that slowly but surely, but certainly being able to adopt the blockchain to timestamp those transactions is where we're headed.
So Karla, how do we get involved? Like you talk about building the community, how does that happen in your model? How do you see us doing that?
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you asked that. For us, it's really about any group that's interested in being able to have that ability to see the skills of all of their members and to be able to on demand request that skill. That's, if you go to yingme.co, YINGME.co, not .com, but .co, you can learn more about us, sign up. And we're also doing for 1,000 community-based groups who are in real need right now for this technology, is we're doing a pay what you can account. Because I do think it's important for us to understand we have so much value, just even within the networks that we have. And then for enterprises, we're so excited to chat with you about how you can adopt this for your employee resource groups. Those employees that are struggling right now, we have a solution.
Thanks, Karla. John, if I could back up a moment to something you said before. You talk about digital art sort of being the part of the popular use case for NFTs. What are some of the other things out there? What are some areas that you think are unexploited or need further fleshing out as we move forward?
Well, I think one of the things, and this looks like Karla's group does some things within this space, and that is, I think you're going to see things like skill sets that haven't been, maybe you haven't been on a traditional career path, for example, or maybe you've Maybe you've been somebody, you really do enjoy going to listen to lectures that interesting people put out there. And maybe those people begin to have almost their own ability to almost distribute NFTs from a credit standpoint. Like, hey, you've been to see, I don't know, you listened to a Jordan Peterson live lecture and you were really, impressed by that. So I think that credentials in some way, now that can get a little bit spooky to some people, and I can kind of understand that. But I think as people begin, this Bitcoin thing is really about, it's a little bit about people taking ownership for things that they just didn't think about in the past. DeFi is about kind of taking ownership in ways that you just didn't even think about, 10, 15 years ago. So I think credentials are one thing. I think branding is another thing that almost just sort of jumps off the page right now. Different companies, I think Taco Bell recently did something like NF Tacos that went to like their scholarship fund. Did you? Yeah. So I think companies and branding is really where we might see this, because again, an NFT, whether it's a musical artist who wants to brand himself, or a company that wants to brand an initiative that they're rolling out, I think you're going to see a lot of things in the branding space. I think music, it obviously lends itself to that. I think there was a band, I think it's like the Kings of Leon is the name of them, just released an album as an NFT. So, on the surface, you say, well, what does that do? Well, obviously, they're trying to generate engagement. And that's really what NFTs allow to do that, like in my baseball card analogy, can't do. So I can't really engage with that piece of paper. And some people would be perfectly fine with that. But a music NFT, for example, they're embedding within an NFT now, hey, look, they'll use, a certain winner's name in a song that they release, on their next album. So there's just some real interactions that I think that you're going to start seeing. So music, definitely. There's already a few things out there. Audience, there's a few different ones that are, almost kind of, taking the Spotify model and then just taking it almost to its logical conclusion, which allows the artists themselves to own the rights to their music. So I think you're going to see that coming. I think branding, Karla mentioned deeds and real estate. I think that one almost just, is so logical right now. Most of us would agree, paying the $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for the deed research when you go to closing, if you could eliminate that, you'd gladly do it. So I think those are some of the most, those are the ones that kind of jump out at me right now.
No, very cool. I want to try to explain this to people. I'm not sure if you agree or not, but I use the analogy of a black box. So it's up until this point, our information is managed like a black box, like with our bank. We throw the money out during, it's in there. We don't really know. It's behind the curtain somewhere. It's off. They're loaned to other banks, and it's going around, and the data isn't really ours. With the blockchain, I think the power is really, you can see inside the black box, first of all, and then you can almost own what's in the black box. So if I'm, like you said with the music artist, like if you're the creator, you can either release that into the wild, or you can basically you don't have to sign it over to someone else to make money off it. It's always yours. It'll always be yours. And to me, that's the power of NFTs. And this whole space is really empowering the user, the owner of that information, whether it be identity or whatever. So we got about 4 minutes left. So we'll end with a forward-looking statement. Karla, we'll start off with you. What's the future look like? The future of this space for NFT in the DeFi space?
I forget who said, I think it was the last panel that, we have to compare this to what happened with the internet, right? And the IT, I always mess out that acronym protocol, right? When you look at it, it's move away from the blockchain for a moment. Like, let's say we fully adopt it. General market gets that it's, let's say Web 3.0 or what have you, right? Like, it's well advanced and it's now a data storage. John, I love using that, right? It's essentially an ability for us to store our data, our medical records, right? I wish I could immediately see all of my medical records. Now that will be very, very accessible, right? I think we're going to also see voting radically change. And you will now be able to vote on the blockchain. I was a part of a journey that just recently happened in Utah with the government, local government being able to adopt the idea of voting for, by the way, our veterans, as well as our elderly. So I think we're going to see a radical shift in what and how we view ownership, to your point, Aaron, and the transparency of it all.
Agreed. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, so there's some interesting things going on, obviously, within this space. I was at the state capitol a couple of months ago, and it was a House panel. They were trying to pass some legislation that was sandbox legislation. So financial sandbox to basically allow folks to come into Louisiana and have a little bit more freer reign with regards to innovation. So we were glad to be part of the conversation, but eventually I had a question came to me from a representative from up North Louisiana, former military guy, and he willingly admitted that he knew nothing about the crypto space. And I respected the fact that he said he knew nothing, and I think that's great. But I think this forum here is interesting because there's nothing in my background that says incredible technological innovator. There's not, I'm a garden variety Marine Corps grunt. There's nothing special about me. But at this point, my 76-year-old father has a Coinbase account and can at least listen to me as I talk about, crypto. So I think the challenge here is to recognize that this is a big shift. I think this is bigger than a lot of people really can almost comprehend. Some of it is philosophical. Some of this with regards to individual sovereignty, with regards to individual accountability. The first person that loses, a couple $100 in a MetaMask wallet is going to lose their mind, right? And so there are things about this space that are it's different. It's different, but it does open up just a whole realm of possibilities for those who are willing to do the research. And Karla, I've been able to kind of look at your group, and I was really interested in some of the things that y'all are doing. I've got people that talk to me, people, whether it's, trying to do something similar almost within their own church. Like, hey, they didn't realize how many talented people were just inside their, the building of their church.
Right.
And so things like this that you start saying, hey, look, we've got some skill here, but in the past, we just didn't know how to monetize it, or we didn't know how to take advantage of this. That's what all this is about to me. And I think that the scary part of this is it does have the potential to widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots if we don't start getting this, we don't bring people into this space, because it is complicated and it's not just run-of-the-mill type things. It's not a little leap. And so I think within this space, we've got to continuously do better. Even when people don't feel like paying attention, we need to encourage them to pay attention because it is important. And to not catch this, it's still early. This is still AOL sending out the CD in the mail and asking you to download this thing on your desktop. I mean, we're still early, but it has the potential to really do some great things. I just think that we're kind of at an inflection point, though, and the more people we can get on board with this, I think it's just the better for everybody. It doesn't fix everything, but it has the potential for good, and I think that's what I most want people to kind of grasp, that we're at that point that good people need to understand what's going on with this.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. So that is the end of our time. Catherine, I'll send it back over to you. Thank you guys for a great conversation. I learned a lot. I am no NFT expert, but I know a little more now than I did a few minutes ago. Thanks again.
Very good. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you. We're wrapping up today's event, multiple sessions from a bunch of great speakers. I did pin a question on the screen, if you can see it, Karla, John. I'd love to get your answer on this. We have a couple of folks in the audience who are just saying, hey, I've got like all these, catchphrases and lingo I'm not familiar with. So where could they, what are some resources you could recommend to our audience members that are a little bit new to NFT and maybe even blockchain as well?
Sure. I was just going to say, I'll chime in really quickly. There's a wonderful gentleman on YouTube that does 99 Bitcoins. I don't know if you guys have run into that, but it is such an incredible explanation of the very basics. And he talks as if you're talking to an average Joe on the street. And that, I think, is what's important to your point, John.
Karla, to kind of bounce off that's actually, I think he's who I started listening to about 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I would spend about 30 minutes a day listening to him until I finally, there's a few light bulb moments that come. I think he's got a slew of great things. Andre Antonopoulos, I hope I'm saying his name correctly. He also has a lot of stuff on YouTube, put some really great content out there, has written a few books on it. So there are definitely people in this space. There's a gentleman named Robert Breedlove, does a lot of philosophical discussions about Bitcoin in particular. So yeah, there's just a lot of great folks that are putting a lot of great content out there because so many of them so believe in it. A lot of it is the vast majority of it is even free, at least versions of it. So yeah, there's so much out there that there's almost no excuse not to kind of know some of the basics and then to be able to delve in even deeper.
And I was going to add just real quick to that, Chris Brummer, who is very, very up to speed, very up to speed with the federal regulatory framework that's happening. And I would say definitely understand the acronyms, glossary of terms, but let's do all of our, all of us a favor, but also understanding what's happening with government regulatory practices.
Just real quick to add to that. So my advice would be to find a 24-year-old and have them explain it to you because they know it. And so that's what we did with we brought some people on staff and they really opened our eyes. And because of that, we have a Discord server, VetCoin HQ, and we posted videos specifically for that purpose from this gentleman, from others that help vets get onto the blockchain, how to set up a wallet, how does DeFi work. So it's just real sort of Barney style basics to explain it to old folks like me. But that's another way to go after it for sure.
I love it. And if you're interested in learning more about Aaron Bazin's VetCoin, I believe the website is vetcoinhq.com. Is that correct?
Yep.
Bravo. Okay. So Aaron, thank you for moderating. Karla, John, thanks for lending your expertise today to shed light on NFTs and DeFi. I wish all of you continued success with VetCoin, YING, and Vellum Capital. And to our guest, thank you again for attending today's military series, Bitcoin, Crypto, and Blockchain.